If I was in the market for an EV daily driver and I wanted to not hate my life, I would actually have, if you're a driving enthusiast and you're in the market for a EV daily driver sedan, I think the two best options are the Porsche Taycan and the Lucid Air. Now these both have a current market value of about $70,000. This Porsche Taycan 4S was bought a few years ago. The actual base MSRP for a 4S is about $105,000, at least back in 2022. But the owner optioned this all the way up to $160K. But now market value with depreciation, because these things depreciate like tanks, is right around $60,000 to $70,000. This Lucid Air you can get right now, brand new, a 2025 model year, for right around $71,000 base MSRP. This one has a few interior quality of life improvements, and those options bring it up to $75,000. This is a 2025 Lucid Air Pure, and that's rear-wheel drive only. It has a single motor in the back, making 430 horsepower, 406 pound-feet of torque with an 88 kilowatt-hour battery. We have a one-speed direct drive, no LSD. It actually uses torque vectoring by braking. Both of these vehicles weigh in right around 4,800 pounds. This Lucid Air has a 420-mile range, is rated at 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. In terms of suspension, we have multi-link both front and rear, compared to the Porsche Taycan, which is double wishbone front and multi-link rear. And compared to the Taycan, it's not quite as quick 0 to 60. The Taycan is 3.5 seconds rated 0 to 60, although Porsche does tend to underrate their vehicles as well. Also, the range is a lot lower. It's 227 or 199 mile range, depending on the battery size you get with that vehicle. It, of course, has one direct drive motor on the front axle. That's just a one-speed. But then the rear, it has a two-speed transmission on the rear axle with an LSD. I gotta say, first impressions, I'm really impressed with the Lucid in terms of packaging. It does have this really weird trunk opening, which I hear helps with the chassis rigidity, actually. It has this really funky key, too, which seems to be buggy. There we go. And the packaging is really impressive. So first of all, this rear door opens at 90 degrees, makes ingress and egress very easy. And look at this rear space. It is incredible. It's like an S-Class back here. Because they completely rethought packaging from the ground up for an EV. And they're clearly thinking differently. And I love it. I'm very impressed. Just in terms of the interior, the quality. $71,000 base MSRP. The interior, I guess I should say $75K with the options, which are upgrades to the interior. It is a very impressive place to be. Nice wood trim here. This fabric they use, it's just designed very well. You have this digital gauge that's actually floating here. It looks nice. And this screen is matte because I guess they don't want the sun reflecting here and blinding you, whereas these are glossy because based on the sun's angle, you're less likely to get glare in that direction. Now to actually adjust the seats and stuff, it is on the screen, of course. And like just about every other manufacturer, they don't let you telescope it out far enough. I need to readjust the seats because it looks like it remembered it from the key setting or from the owner setting rather than what I did to drive it up here. In terms of seating position though, you can get in a decent spot. This is of course a sedan, so you're not going to be quite as low as you would want in a sports car, but I think for a sedan, it's a very appropriate and on the sportier side in terms of seating position. And in terms of drive modes, we have smooth, swift, and sprint. We'll go to sprint. And we'll start with standard regenerative braking, although it is pretty aggressive. Use the stock to get into drive. And we're off. First impressions in EV, of course, very quiet and serene. And then just like that, instant torque. Wow. EVs will always impress you by having such a low center of gravity, such that they manage their weight in an impressive way. So 4,800 pounds, it doesn't feel like that because all the batteries, all that weight is down low. So you have really good body control at the weight and quite good ride comfort. The compliance is there because they don't have to overly stiffen the car to get that body control. With the low center of gravity, you're not going to have much pitch and roll. So regenerative braking on standard is pretty aggressive, which is fine when you're driving on the street for one pedal driving, but on the canyons, let's try low, see how that compares. Now the steering is pretty numb, but it is very direct, very precise. You can place the car exactly where you want it. It's funny, after driving many other EVs, Kias and Tesla Plaid and the Model 3 and all that stuff, it really shows you what a driver's EV can be, because this is really excellent. You have great chassis rigidity. The brake pedal feel is nicely calibrated. It feels just right. Steering as well, the ratio is not overly fast like in so many modern cars. And I take back what I said about the steering. When you pay attention, there is a little bit of feedback. There's not very much. It's very low volume, but it is there. And to activate launch mode, press and hold the brake pedal with your left foot while holding the brake pedal. It is what we all know, right? Launch mode. Okay, it's not gonna rip your face off with speed like Tesla Plaid, obviously. That car has more than twice the horsepower. But for the streets, this is all you really need in terms of power. Actually, really nice brake pedal feel. And even the throttle, right? They don't make it an on-off switch. It's so well calibrated. All the inputs here are calibrated in such a natural way. And the damping is actually excellent. It is very comfortable with such good body control. If I was in the market for an EV daily driver and I wanted to not hate my life, I would actually have this pretty high on the list, because at $71,000, it is very competitive. Now, if you pay more money, you can of course get greater performance, because in terms of modern EV performance, this is not that impressive in terms of acceleration and such. But the chassis, the suspension, the interior, the calibration of everything, all the inputs, is really phenomenal at $71,000 new. Yeah, I think the regen at low is actually quite natural. It feels more like a gas-powered, an ICE vehicle, in the sense that when you're at high RPM in an ICE and you get off the throttle, you of course have a little bit of engine braking, and low on the regen feels similar to that. Even with these direction changes, surprisingly nimble at 4,800 pounds. Oh, all these quail, suicidal quail, adrenaline junkies there. Now, to get this car down to the price of $71,000, they of course had to cut a few corners or have some cost-saving measures, right? So it's not going to be all-wheel drive. You can pay more to get the all-wheel drive version. It's not going to have an LSD in the back. And, most people that are daily driving an EV, they're not going to take it to the canyons and try to get a little bit of slip angle, right? So it's okay for it to have an open diff in the back with the brake vectoring. They focused on what people want. Nice interior, nice natural driving dynamics and ergonomics. And even from the more expensive vehicles, what trickles down is the chassis, right? The chassis, the attention to making a car not just be practical and having this great packaging so you can maximize volume, but also having good fundamentals with the suspension geometry, with the chassis rigidity. At this price point, you're also not getting adaptive dampers. But that's okay, because I think that the suspension in this one setting is quite comfortable, and again, it gives you that good body control because of EV's low center of gravity. Oh, handles that big bump right there incredibly well. Quick enough response to the suspension, then it sets. You don't have that excess body motion. Really impressed. At $71,000, I think Lucid has knocked it out of the park with this vehicle. Oh, that's a nice touch too. Blind spot monitor right there. Now, I'm not someone who owns an EV, but if I were in the market, because I care so much about how a car drives day to day, this is making a very convincing argument. But I'm curious, does Stuttgart make a better argument? Let's find out. 2022 Porsche Taycan 4S. And we already covered most of the details, so I'll keep this brief. This is a dual motor, so we have 523 horsepower, 472 pound-feet of torque peak, with a rating of 429 horsepower continuous if fitted with a 79.2 kilowatt-hour battery. And if you option for a 93 kilowatt-hour battery, you get 563 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque peak with 483 horsepower continuous. This is a 2022 model year. If you opt for a 2025, then you're actually getting a bump in the battery capacity and power output. And even though this is all-wheel drive, it has the same weight rating of 4,800 pounds compared to the Lucid, but when you get to the interior, it is much smaller, and actually, I don't even know if I can fit behind myself. Ooh, not really. My knees are touching the front seat. The packaging in the Lucid is a lot better, but Porsche interior build quality is excellent. And the design and the styling, I think, is phenomenal. I think this is the best looking EV out there. At least from the exterior, and the interior, I'd say it's pretty nice as well. Just like in the Lucid, we got big screen here and smaller screen there. Got buttons on the steering wheel, but this is all haptic touch, and we can adjust the electronic sounds on and off, which is actually, the owner was explaining to me, it's not a fake sound, it's more that they use a microphone near the motors and then play that through the speakers. You can also adjust the ride height here. We do have adaptive dampers, which are 3-stage. We'll start off in normal and drive mode in sport. Rather than a stock, we're going to use the bronze shaver over here to get into drive. And there we go. Driving position here feels a lot sportier as well. I'm lower down, steering wheel's in a better spot. The ergonomics in that Lucid are not quite as good as in the Porsche. And first impression, this car is much stiffer, even in normal, compared to the Lucid, which is far more comfort oriented. More precise, sharp end. The brake pedal actually feels, when you're driving it slow, the initial travel is a little bit inconsistent and then it really grabs. But when you're driving it a bit harder, this feels just as good as any other modern Porsche. That brake pedal, where you get into it, has that perfect amount of firmness. Let's actually get this up into Sport Plus. You can definitely feel a lot more higher frequency road textures, but the body control here is far better. I'm actually really liking the brake pedals here. On the way up, I wasn't liking the brake pedal feel because I was driving it much slower, but now that I'm pushing it a bit harder, the brakes here feel easier to modulate and more confidence inspiring than in the Lucid. Front end is a bit sharper, even more precise. The steering, actually, like the actual steering wheel itself, feels, I guess, more fitting of a car. The Lucid was like a little bit chunky and kind of awkwardly shaped and positioned. But just the details, the fine little details of input calibration and steering wheel feel and ergonomics, you can see Porsche is a few layers above. Let's give you a launch. Left foot on the brake. Yeah, that's a proper EV launch. A good amount more juice and more oomph than that Lucid, but of course, brand new, this car was quite a bit more expensive. It's just that with the insane depreciation that is hitting these Porsche Taycans, then now you can get one for around the same price or even cheaper than that Lucid. Now the biggest difference, I would say, because all these little details when it comes to input and calibration and ergonomics, you will get used to them as you own a car. But things that you won't necessarily get used to are things like ride quality. And in the Porsche, even when I go into normal mode here, it's softest setting in the 3-stage adaptive dampers, whereas again, the Lucid Air that we drove does not have adaptive dampers. This is still firmer than the Lucid. And the chassis tuning here, I mean, this is Porsche, right? When Porsche's making a sporty 4-door EV, you know it's gonna drive well. It is more responsive, it is more fitting of a tight canyon road like this, but the comfort is a little bit compromised. Is it uncomfortable? No, absolutely not. I actually think that it rides quite well for something that is sporty, but if you prioritize a more supple, compliant ride, the Lucid might be a better fit. Yeah, far more planted than that Lucid, a much more taut chassis. Now, there are more squeaks and rattles here, but this car is a few years older and it has 30,000 miles on the odometer. The other thing you get with the Lucid is far better packaging. You can tell that they optimize this around being an EV, whereas with Porsche here, I mean, the rear seats are really compromised. The space, the practicality is nowhere near that of the Lucid. You have far less range. It feels to me like you would get the Porsche if you prioritize driving dynamics above all else, because this does drive better. The steering is more precise. It has this more natural weighting to it. They both have great steering ratios, and the Lucid, when I first drove it, I think my set point was in comparison to Tesla's, and to that it feels years ahead, like a completely different game in terms of naturalness and inputs and just how good it feels to drive on a canyon road. But then this, it's not quite as big of a jump from Tesla to Lucid, but Lucid to Porsche, this then feels like a proper sports car. Like the driving position in the Lucid is not quite there. The steering is good, but not quite there. You get a little bit of feedback in both, and I actually prefer the Porsche steering in terms of not only feedback, but the feel of the steering wheel and how sharp and immediate the front end is, but of course that's also in large part due to the stiffer suspension. But what impresses me most about both of these vehicles is how they handle their weight, because 4,800 pounds is no featherweight, but because, again, that center of gravity and they've done good suspension tuning, they drive really well. It's mostly under braking as you enter a corner that you really feel the weight, and apart from that, it fools you. It convinces you that it's much lighter than it actually is. You'll have to decide whether you like the added sound or not. I think it's actually quite nice. It's like very subtle. It gives you a little bit of that auditory feedback that you lose out on from EVs, that you miss from the ICE. But we'll see how it handles this big bump. Not bad. Definitely a firmer car than the Lucid, and there's a trade-off there, obviously. So, between Lucid and Porsche Taycan, $70,000, which one are you choosing? If you want range, comfort, and packaging, go for the Lucid. If you prioritize driving dynamics more than anything else, then Porsche is the one to get. Now, this does not have one pedal driving, and I think that's part of the reason why the brakes feel better, but I still don't know why they don't feel great at low speed, because my understanding is that Porsche with the Taycan did not include regenerative braking, yet they do have this recuperation setting on the dash that does seem like regen braking. So if you know, leave a comment below. Big thanks to the owners for letting me review their cars. Shout out to Fenton from the Zygoon channel as well. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.